Welcome, good evening. I invite you all to have a seat. We're so glad you're here. Everyone have a seat. Welcome and good evening. Thank you to our host this evening here in this building is Angel Pediatrics, Angel Kids. We are really grateful for the space they've offered us this evening and all the support that they've given us. Thank you also to our candidates and to our moderator for joining us. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Rebecca McLeod-Hutto. I am the Executive Director of the Interfaith Center of Northeast Florida, and we are really excited to host tonight's event, a first event like this of our kind for our organization. And in your chairs, you will find a little bit about our organization. We actually began in 2012. We were formerly known as the Atlantic Institute, always focused on interfaith dialogue. We gather regularly each month to support dialogue with diverse religions and those who are non-religious. Our core values are mutual curiosity, interfaith literacy, and community engagement. And you'll see on the flyer, we do have some upcoming events in the next 3 months, and you can find out more about those events and about our organization by following us on social media, or you can follow us on our website. I learned tonight, with our technology, we also have a YouTube channel. I'd like to recognize Alex Savar, our board president, if you would stand and say hello. Thank you, Alex. And several of our board members are here this evening. If you would stand, if you are on our board currently. We do have some previous board members as well. Thank you all for your important work. We exist thanks to the generous donations from the community, and you will also see a QR code on the flyer, on the handout for you to help support the work that we do. As the Interfaith Center, we believe diversity is a gift. Diversity is one of the best parts of the city in which we live. Tonight, we are looking forward to our mayoral candidates sharing their vision on how they will bring the city together, welcoming the diversity that is here and celebrating its growth. Thank you to Melissa Ross from WJCT for being our moderator this evening. And a reminder that the election is March 21st and early voting begins March 6th through the 19th. Welcome and thank you again to all of our candidates, and welcome, Melissa.
Good evening. Looks like it's ladies' night, which I think is great. And I'm really honored to introduce these three incredible, credentialed, capable, smart women who are all asking for your vote to lead this city, as we welcome to the stage in alphabetical order, Leanna Cumber, Donna Deegan, and Audrey Gibson. Ladies. Thank you all so much for being here. I know that you have a punishing schedule right now, all of you, as you campaign, and I have a little bit of a sense of how difficult and tiring that is. So I think on behalf of this packed crowd, thank you for taking the time to be with this group tonight. Now, as you just heard, the Interfaith Center is a nonpartisan organization, and they have asked me to moderate tonight and ask these candidates a series of questions about tonight's theme, which is bringing the city together. How will the new mayor move beyond buzzwords and leverage Jacksonville's increasing diversity? How will the new mayor ensure that the city's leadership reflects the community they serve? These are the kinds of questions that we will be posing to the candidates tonight. I've been given a series of questions that each candidate will have a couple of minutes to respond to. There'll be a chance for follow-ups, and then a chance for all of you to submit questions to the candidates. So without any further ado, let's begin with City Council Member Leanna Cumber. We're just going to go right down the line in alphabetical order. Ms. Cumber, thank you for being here. And the first question is, what is your vision to make Jacksonville an inclusive and equitable community where all residents of the city can feel welcomed and safe?
Thank you for having, is it on? Yes. Thank you for having me, Melissa, and thank you all for being here. That question is very important to me as someone who grew up in a bilingual household and who's married to my husband, who some of you know or have met. His family came from Pakistan and Bangladesh. And so between the 5 grandparents, because my parents are divorced, there are 5 languages spoken and 2 major religions represented in our family. And so it's very important to me that in a city of 1 million people, where we have communities from all over the world, we are now, my dad's side is Cuban, we are now 11% Hispanic. We have a growing and very large Haitian community. You can go down the list of the communities that are finding their homes in Jacksonville. It's really critical that our leadership starts to represent the entire community. It's very hard to bring businesses in if families don't feel comfortable, or if the businesses don't feel like their families are going to have communities that are similar to theirs. And so for me, it's something that I've worked on since I've been on council. One of the things that I did was pass a landmark human trafficking bill, and as part of that, there's a sex trafficking survivors board. That board is incredibly diverse because we wanted to make sure that everyone who was touched by this crime was represented as much as possible on it. So I think there's some intentionality that needs to go along with it.
Donna Deegan, your vision to make this city an inclusive and equitable community where everyone can feel welcomed and safe.
Well, I think that, as I've said so many times, our diversity here is our strength. We have so many groups in this city. My family came here from Syria and Lebanon back right after the Great Fire. In fact, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the thousands of people who have died in that absolutely horrific earthquake over in Syria and Turkey, which I think is worth discussing tonight because of the circumstances that those folks find themselves in. If we were not in such civil distress, if there were not so many refugees that were in such horrible, horrible situations there, we wouldn't have so many dead. And this is what happens when we don't see each other's humanity. This is what happens. When my family came here, they came here to escape religious persecution and to start a new life. And I remember so well when my cousin Tommy was running for mayor of Jacksonville. I remember the gentleman, one of the gentlemen he was running against, that was part of a very strong religious faction in this city, said, we need an all-American mayor. We don't need to have that kind of mayor. Well, Jacksonville has the 10th largest Arabic community in the entire country. Whenever we fail to see one group, we fail to see everybody. And I think, in Jacksonville, so much diversity, but that means that we're only as strong as our response to our smallest group. That means that the Baptists have to lift the Baha'i. We have to be that community. And it's been incredibly important to me in the work that I've done in both journalism and in philanthropy to make sure we lift everyone's voices. And cancer is never an issue that only affects one group. So it's very, very important that we see everybody and that everybody is included. And under a Donna Deegan administration, we are going to have a whole lot more diversity in our city than we do right now.
Audrey Gibson, your vision to make the city more inclusive and equitable where everyone feels welcomed and safe.
And thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. I'm excited and delighted to be here. I am Audrey Gibson, former member of the Florida House and just recently member of the Florida Senate. Just in this last election was the end of my term because we have term limits. And so before I even left the legislature, I wanted to make sure that I brought my skills and talents to our city, because particularly watching the division over the years has really, really made me think about staying home and taking care of home. And so, Melissa, I don't necessarily talk about vision. I talk about possible, because possible is action. It denotes action. And so possible means we all can work together. The demographics already tell us that our city has changed over time. And so we are now a majority-minority city. So that means we're already diverse. And that means we have to embrace each other. So what does that look like? What's possible? Possible is going to worship services together. Do you guys know that Sunday is the most divided day in the week? How about we invite each other to church? Possible is having dinner together. Possible is enjoying each other's heritage, despite the fact that we have someone who's banning our books. Let's get together and share those banned books that represent our culture and not let anyone else divide us, not in this state, not in this country, and certainly not in this city. So as someone who has traveled internationally, you would be surprised how much more love there is in certain countries. I've been to Italy to meet with their legislative folks there. They love everybody. They do. I think it's a city of love. And many African Americans back in the day, too, went to other countries where they could perform and sing and all of that. And it was so different by doing that. Am I done? Are you moving?
Nobody has hit a buzzer yet, but
Okay.
I'm not sure they're gonna, but go ahead.
Okay. And so my experiences internationally, that's just one of the many countries I've been to on behalf of our city. And my family is very diverse. We came from Jacksonville. Some of my relatives came from Hilliard. And so, so we got a really good mix there. And my family is diverse in my immediate family. My son and my nephew, my brother, we have a multicultural family. And I've always embraced multiculturalism, and I will bring that same embrace to the mayor's office. And I want to have more than one unity festival where we all get together, not only and share our cultural habits, but our food. There's so many of us that have not taken advantage of the many experiences that we can have, but it is possible with Audrey Gibson as your mayor.
Follow-up for all three of you. Of course, most here know that in recent months, Jacksonville has received very negative national media attention for hate displays, anti-Semitic displays, messages of hate all over the city, mainly during high-profile sporting events. The City Council has acted to stop those displays and hold people accountable. That was certainly welcomed. At the same time, it's been pointed out that the council has been slow to act on the issue of Confederate monuments, which are seen by many as a symbol of hate and division as well. And so with City Council Terrence Freeman saying some action would be taken on this year, I'd like to ask all three of you as a follow-up where you stand on that issue and what actions you would take as mayor to put that issue to bed and to continue to speak out against hate speech.
Thank you, Melissa. So, and as you know, I authored the bill against projections. And on the flip side, I do not believe that we can erase or ignore history, and I think we need to talk about it. And so I am not in favor of trying to wipe it out.
So by that you mean you're not in favor of removing the monuments?
I think it gives us an opportunity to contextualize and discuss our history, which I think is really critical, because otherwise you are doomed to repeat it. And those who are from countries that have dealt with the things over centuries and all over the world where history is destroyed and it gets repeated, then I think we need to learn from those lessons and not repeat it.
Donna Deegan.
Well, you know, with due respect, we've been talking about this for a long, long time. And at some point, talk is cheap. I think that I'm not saying that that takes the place of so many things we need to do to create a better opportunity for so many people in this city. But at the end of the day, if you do not recognize people's humanity, I'm going to say it over and over again, it is hard to have the conversations that you need to have to move us forward. It is bad for our community. It is bad for business. There is no business that wants to move to a city that is still fighting the Civil War. And there's absolutely no excuse at this point to not take those monuments down. I am perfectly willing to put them in a museum and put labels on them for exactly what they are. Symbols of hate, symbols of a time that we should be, frankly, ashamed of. And I would certainly be willing, as our mayor has been willing, to spend city dollars to get that done, because until we do it, it's very, very difficult to move forward in those ways in which we must move forward in a city, to create a city that works for all of us and not just the handful that it works for now.
And by the way, I was cautioned to tell all of you not to clap until it's over. Maybe just hold your applause.
I want my turn. I want
Audrey
my
Gibson,
turn.
please,
I
yes.
want my turn. No, I want my claps, too. Thank you all very much. And so, okay. Here's what's possible and what I believe. There should be no symbol of oppression, degradation, or sexism in public spaces in Jacksonville. That's where I stand on it, and I believe then those things, objects in public spaces should be removed, because we are all citizens of Jacksonville, and we don't deserve to feel any type of way other than ourselves very proud every day of our life. And so in public spaces, no. And then here's my plan as mayor to deal with the removal. That is to have Douglas Anderson School of the Arts, and I've already kind of talked to him about it. We need to commission them, or as mayor, I would make sure they were commissioned to design and build a work of art that is representative of our city the way we exist today and modern history. And so that is my possible for the statutes and any other object that meets the criteria that I just explained. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we are here on behalf tonight of the Interfaith Center. There are people here tonight of many different faith traditions. And this question comes from the center for the candidates. How has your faith informed your positions as a candidate? What will you do to ensure that your policy positions as mayor are respectful of all faith traditions, particularly those who are numerical minorities in this city? Leanna Cumber.
Thank you. So, I think it is I grew up Catholic, and my husband's an Ismaili Muslim, and we have different faiths throughout the family and friends. And I think what's important is that faith is really how you behave and dictates how you raise your children and what you do. And so for me, it dictates the respect that I give all faiths, which is why I've been endorsed by the National Committee on Religious Freedom, because I think it's critical that we live in a country that allows everyone to practice their faith in any way they see fit and where they see fit and how they see fit without any retribution. So I think it's important that we embrace all the faiths that are out there, and make sure that we, again, protect. It's why I was the first to author the anti-Semitism projection bill, because we had seen it over and over again, and as I'm sure you've seen in the news, we continue to see this, and it's something that's been happening all over. So it really is, we raise our children to have compassion, to not just be, And I think in leaders, you need to have people who are intellectually curious, intellectually capable, but also have heart. And so that's how I operate in my life.
Donna Deegan.
Gosh, I don't know how to even separate anything I do from my faith. I have said so many times that it is by God's grace that I am here living and breathing today. I have, as many of you know, survived cancer 3 times. I started the foundation really as a way to make sure that everyone had an opportunity to thrive. And that very much comes from a part of my personal faith. And I guess I'm Catholic by faith, but I tend to, my God's pretty big. I mostly go by the red words, and that is, brothers and sisters, love one another. And that means all of us. It means that I have to respect how everybody believes. And when you're in the world that I have been in, whether it was my job as a news anchor, where I tried to bring everybody's voice into the room, or whether it has been building and leading a foundation that has helped more than 18,000 people who have been living with cancer while they go through a very difficult time. I believe that my faith calls me to be present for my brothers and sisters. I believe that I am my brother's keeper. When I went through cancer for the 3rd time and I thought I wasn't going to live, I remember for the first time ever knowing what it was like to really give it over, to let it go and let God handle it. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that in very different ways, but for me it was and has become a mantra for me and my foundation of love over fear. And that is at a point at which, this is why I've always rejected the whole notion of cancer being a battle, because we have absolutely no control over what happens to us. All we can do is be present in our lives and try to get up and do good things every single day. And so for me, that whole notion of love over fear is where my faith has brought me, and what I will bring to the mayor's office. I think that we are so lacking in compassion these days in our politics. I'm so tired of the words that we need to act this way to each other or that way to each other, but then how do we actually behave? How do we behave when the rubber meets the road? And then we say, well, that's just politics. That's just how it is. We just have to do that. We don't have to do it, because it's divisive and it's not what God calls us to do with each other. So to me, it is my faith that guides me. It is that love for my neighbor and my community that guides me, and I am grateful every day that, as I said, by God's grace, I'm still here to do the work.
Audrey Gibson. Audrey Gibson.
Thank you very much. Well, I walk in my faith every single day. I was raised by faithful parents. I don't know any other way to be but a faithful servant. And so particularly when you are in a super minority in the legislature, trying to get things done for your community, which I did, and I didn't try, I did it, by faith. It is very difficult sometimes to get people to understand what your community is going through and what you're trying to do. And so without my faith, I probably would have said some things I probably shouldn't have, or told some people a few things they probably needed to do or where they needed to go. And so I raised my family in faith too. And there's been tragic times in my life, and almost tragic. When I was 15, I had a red Mustang, Melissa. Yeah, I did. And I turned. I didn't see the car.
15?
That was good. 15,
Okay.
almost 16.
Okay.
But I'm not spoiled or anything like that. And I turned, and I didn't see the car that I turned in front of. And so I was hit on the passenger side. The windshield caved in. Back then, you didn't have to wear seatbelts. And so this is why sometimes you probably think, well, is she a little bit crazy? But I'm really not. So I was thrown out of the car head first through the windshield, and I literally had rocks in my head. And I spent about 3 or 4 days in the hospital and had stitches and everything like that. My faith brought me through that. I had to not go to school for a couple of weeks and spend a few days in the hospital. And the faith of my parents got them through it. Because my dad, my mom said, didn't even put the car in drive when somebody called them and told them that an accident and they found my license. He didn't even put the car in drive, and he jumped out of the car. The car is going down the street, and my mom's grabbing it. My dad was also a steward at our church, St. Paul AME Church. And my mom was over some of the nursing, the medical facility or the nursing area in the church. Faith brought me through watching my mom at 84 develop Alzheimer's disease and metastatic breast cancer at the same time. It was so unfair. But my faith got me through that and all that it takes, as you understand, to take care of someone who can't care for themselves and to watch the surgical process and all the things that have to happen after that. It takes faith to step out in front of the public on a daily basis. It takes faith to put forward the issues that I want to bring forward for our community. It takes faith. You have no idea how many times people come over and say, well, you didn't do anything for me, or this, that, or the other thing. Faith keeps me moving on a daily basis. And I tell you, every night, before I go to bed, I watch my dad die too, right? So I have his Bible, and he was blind, almost blind, and then went blind totally in both eyes. And so he had his Bible, because he used to read, because he was a steward. He has it tabbed, so with big tabs so he could see the chapters. And then he has it in half, so we have the New Testament separate from the Old Testament. And so I read every night spiritual verses and thank God for the day. I use my dad's Bible to read the scriptures that are in those, the spiritual books that we have sometimes by our bed every single night. Because my faith is strong, and it will always continue to be that. And I want this community always to live in it's your faith and your truth. And we have to be accepting of that. And faith is part of many of our culture, right? So let's live our faith every day and walk in it, and we will be a much better community for it. Thank you.
The Interfaith Center has brought us together tonight to talk about these themes of diversity, equity, inclusion. And so that's in the news. Just as we are meeting here tonight, we're hearing from some professors at Florida colleges and universities that they are being asked to show the state legislature emails, possibly their private text messages and social media DMs, if they have had anything to do with curriculum on Florida campuses involving DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Critics of this request by the state legislature have called this a direct assault on academic freedom. Supporters say that DEI efforts, not just on the campus, but in the culture at large, have gone too far. And so I thought it would be timely to ask the candidates where they stand on this issue and how, as mayor, they would address these types of cultural divisions and how they feel about DEI. And so that's really the question, if I could get all of you to answer it. Thank you. Leanna Cumber.
Sure. Well, one, I think I slightly disagree with the premise of your question, but
Why is that?
Because the premise of your question has already made a conclusion. But what I'll say is.
Well, no, I
what-
made a point of saying that there are people who support it and people who oppose it, and I'm just wondering where you guys stand.
Do you want me to answer the
Sure,
question, or
go
do you
ahead.
want to keep talking? Okay.
Go ahead.
The university system is paid by taxpayers in the state of Florida and is run and is controlled by the governor, who is voted in at 60%. So the university system is answerable to the governor and the board of governors over the system.
And it
And
is
so-
my understanding this is being done outside the purview of the Board of Governors, although I'll fact check that.
And what I think is critical, and one of the things that we have lost, when you look at our city, so let's focus back on city issues. We have a 47% at-grade reading level in third grade. 47%, it's gone from 60% to 47% in 6 years. Ribault Middle School is at 25% at-grade reading level. And by the way, I have a 9 and 11-year-old, and I don't want my kids reading only at grade. That is the floor. As a former 3rd and 5th grade bilingual teacher, that's a floor. When we have 75% of our kids at Ribault Middle School not reading between a 1st and a 5th grade reading level, and we are set now to have the second highest homicide rate in 24 years, these are the issues that we need to be laser focused on. And we need to make sure that we are teaching our kids how to read, we are teaching them math, we are teaching them science so that they can be competitive on the global stage, and that goes with universities as well. But as a mayor, the direct contact that I have with education, that I will have with education, is in our from 0 all the way through to graduating high school. And that is what I'm laser focused on, because if we do not focus on education in the city and making sure that our kids are successful in reading and math and science, then we are never going to be able to reduce our crime rate. We are never going to be able to improve the quality of life. And we are doing a disservice to all the parents out there and all the kids out there. And that's what I'm focused on, and that's what everyone in the city should be focused on. And they should have been focusing on it for years, and it's been left behind, and that's why I'm running.
As mayor, what would you do to promote an environment where reading at grade level is where it needs to be, and at the same time, parents and educators have been expressing concern about books being taken out of classroom libraries and school libraries? That is another hot topic right now. And I am planning to ask all 3 candidates about the city's public safety problems as well, but I wasn't planning to lead with that since I was asked to talk more about these other themes to kick off the evening.
We need to be laser focused on literacy. When we don't have libraries in every public school in the city, and we should. So we need to be focused. The money that we spend on after school and summer school programs should be laser focused on early childhood learning. Because when kids are going to school, when they're starting kindergarten and they're learning how to read in kindergarten, they're already so far behind. And that's what we need to focus on. And that's what I will be focused on, in making sure that literacy is a huge part of the city and we become the best in the country in literacy and getting our kids to read.
Donna Deegan.
Well, you know, I believe Florida is 49th or something like that in education funding. I think our Duval County schools on average have a B. I think that's the average in Duval County. At the end of the day, what we are seeing is we are seeing an attack on a couple of things. We're seeing an attack on education, on public education. Let's be honest. A lot of these moves are made simply to degrade public education so that we can make sure that we pump a lot more money into privatizing our schools. That's really what a lot of this is geared toward. There's so, I almost, Melissa, hate to get involved in this whole discussion about book banning and all this, because I'm sad to say I think it's exactly what the governor wants. He wants this war, he wants this fight, because it draws out the worst instincts in people to fight over. But let's just get to the base of it. Do we want to become a state, a country, a city that is banning books? Is that good for our kids? I cannot even tell you how many parents have contacted me over the past couple of weeks. One woman, and I sure hope it gets her politically involved, who said, I have never been involved in politics in my life. I've always just wanted, to take my kids to school and have them learn and not get myself involved in all these fights. But she said, my kid came home crying her eyes out because all the books were taken out of her library, and the novel they're in the middle of reading had to be closed up, and she doesn't understand what's happening, and she's scared. And she said, and now I'm just mad as hell, and I'm gonna get involved because this is ridiculous. And it is ridiculous. It's all sleight of hand is really what it is. Look over here so you don't see that I'm robbing you over here. That's really what's happening to our public schools. But we cannot, it's hard to know how to respond to it without getting sucked into the food fight that always seems to happen with these culture war issues. They're important issues. But unfortunately, what is happening is your attention's being drawn over here while your freedoms are being taken over here. So this whole discussion of freedom sounds to me like freedom for me, but not for thee. And I am really, really disheartened for our teachers who work so hard to educate our children, to be placed in the middle of this just absolutely unconscionable situation. We had a situation where all of us on this stage were asked a few weeks ago to sign a civility pledge by One Jacks, or you all are familiar with One Jacks. It's associated with UNF. All asked to sign a civility pledge, which was supposed to be released on January the 28th. January 28th came and went, and I called to find out, well, what happened to that civility pledge? Well, we had to pull it. We had to pull it. Yeah, there were some people who weren't very happy about that. Called it too woke. There were concerns because of the attack on what's happening at our universities with exactly this type of thing, taking people's emails and sharing information. I mean, what in the world is going on? What is happening when we can't even pledge to be civil to each other? This is what is happening in our community, and here's what it does. It serves a political purpose because it divides us against each other. But what does it do to our children? What does it do to all of our children, all of our very different children, who each deserve to be seen and each deserve to have an education? So I'm afraid what some people are calling religious or liberty, to me, sounds a lot like my way or the highway. And I trust our teachers. I'd like to make sure we're funding our public schools. Not that I have a lot of control over that as mayor, but I can tell you, I will use my voice to speak up for our teachers, and I will not let people stroll in here every 5 minutes spewing things that only divide us and don't bring us together. Because this is really, it's just a travesty what is happening in our schools. I'm sorry. I'm getting real upset about this issue, and I know you do too.
Just as long too, so let's
Go
get
ahead,
at it.
go ahead, you tell them.
Audrey Gibson.
What was the question? I swear we've gone away from the original question. So can you remind me so I talk about possible on the right thing?
Well, as someone who served in the legislature,
Yes.
could you respond to the news that lawmakers are asking for emails, direct message, possibly DMs and texts around DEI on campus. And, you know, Councilwoman Cumber said the focus should be on just providing a world-class education for our kids, which I think everyone can agree on. But at the same time, there are concerns about books being removed from libraries, classroom libraries, school libraries. What's your reaction as a former state lawmaker to this educational climate?
Well, first of all, I had the opportunity to vote no last session on the ridiculousness of getting rid of or penalizing people for diversity and inclusion and awareness, and it makes absolutely no sense. So I think that what people may not understand is not only are they asking for the emails probably under a public records request, but because they're state controlled anyway, even in the legislature, texting and email and all of that is subject to public records requests. And so the idea of soothing someone who is unknown to any of us by removing historical publications and books and not talking about diversity and inclusion after we've finally gotten to the point where we want to definitely be inclusive. We have y'all's governor who has decided that history of people is no longer important, who has decided and probably for some reason doesn't get what going to Disney World looks like. You know what I'm saying? It's not all one color people. There are millions and millions of people from different regions of the world that come to Disney, and why would they not want to have diversity and inclusion training so they understand the cultural ways or mores of the people who are visiting? So I asked this question on the floor in committee, that what is making somebody feel bad about talking about history or what happened to a group of people? The answer was, well, we shouldn't talk about what happened to them. We should talk about what they overcame. I'm like, well, how the heck you talk about what somebody overcame if you don't talk about what they went through? It makes absolutely no sense. But this is the logic that's happening in Tallahassee. But that's why we have to stay laser focused on Jacksonville. This is what I've been saying since I filed to run. When it's time for state politics, well, the time is now because we need to raise up on the books that are being taken off the shelves in our library in our city, and I'm a member of the Library Advisory Board, by the way. How do you don't talk about what happened, but you talk about, oh, look what they overcame. Well, we don't know because we don't get to talk about what they overcame. That's silly. And then it seems to be extremely cultural. It's a cultural divide. Many of the banned books were written by African Americans or non-white people. That is absurd. And then there's also economic punishment. So the institutions stand to lose money. Those institutions that we want our children to go to are losing money. Libraries will lose money. The books aren't on the shelf. What in the world is happening in the free state of Florida? Well, I'll tell you what, you're only free when you're told that you're free. And that cannot continue. It definitely would not happen under my watch as mayor, because I believe in inclusiveness. I believe in sharing culture. Excuse me. So what are we to do? Procedurally, Melissa, you cannot stop what's happening in the legislature. And so whatever folks who are against diversity and inclusion want to make up, that can happen without any stopgap And even yesterday, the Supreme Court decided that they're not going to include diversity and inclusion in their training rules anymore. So we're being attacked. And so we're being attacked, which means we have to come together more, because the whole issue and the whole reason for what is happening, and Donna touched on it a little bit, is that the person who is creating the division is the person who is empowered. And as long as that person creates division, they will continue to be empowered. But when we come together as a community and push back, who has the power? We do. They're afraid of that. Because when we actually join hands, when we actually appreciate each other, when we actually do go to church together and eat together and share our cultural mores together, that makes him and anybody else who agrees with him look all the more petty. And we have the opportunity to change that if we want to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's talk about public safety. Jacksonville has been the murder capital of Florida off and on for over 20 years. As mayor, how would you address this issue, which has been a very difficult one for a series of mayors for many years? Councilwoman Cumber.
Thank you, and I do just want to add just a little thing. The governor won by a larger margin than any governor ever in this state. So to be clear, people are moving to Florida in droves. Why? Because we are the free state of Florida, and we did open up, and our economy surpassed economies across the country. And so I just want to be abundantly clear on that it is people from all over this country want to have the opportunities and the economic opportunities we have here in Florida. On crime, you're right, we need to get a hold of our crime issue. And it is something that I have been laser focused on since I got into office. The first thing I did, because we are never going to be able to resolve crime if we're only addressing it in a reactive way. We need to also look at things proactively. We need to make sure that whether it's our JSO or our fire department, that they have all of the resources that they need. But the other thing we need to do is make sure that we are looking at crime proactively. So in addition to making sure that our kids can read, we have trade schools, they have opportunities. The first thing I did when I got on council was I shut down the internet cafes. These illegal internet gambling cafes were destroying neighborhoods throughout the city. Not only were they destroying neighborhoods, because they're all cash businesses, there was lots of crime, they also were requiring lots of multiple hundreds of JSO calls. Then I passed a landmark human trafficking bill that the state of Texas copied. And after that, drafted and passed a nuisance abatement board. And this is the one that I think is it's one of the ones I'm most proud of, and it is already starting to change this entire city. And I just want to tell you a little bit of how I came to it. I was riding around with JSO in various parts of the city, and I kept going to the same places. And if I was going to the same places, going around with them every couple months, then I knew that these places were causing a lot of problems and there's a lot of criminal activity. So I finally, after going into the Eagle Inn on Phillips Highway, and there were 3 rooms that had drug dealers in each of the rooms, and there was human trafficking there, I went to the mayor's office and I said, what can we do about this? We have to shut them down. It's all cash, there's criminal activity happening, and the response I got was, there's nothing we can do. There's this complicated DART process that really doesn't end up shutting the business down, or we can issue code violations. So I happen to be talking to a good friend of mine in the Florida State Legislature and saying that can't possibly be the answer, that we can't do anything. And he said, you're right, that isn't the answer. the state of Florida allows municipalities to create nuisance abatement boards. So I read up on it, I created one, I made it as airtight and legal proof because it's a quasi-judicial board, and I'm a lawyer, so I tried to make it as if someone were to appeal. It was the most legal proof board. And what it does is it allows the city, for the very first time ever, to hold businesses that are allowing criminal activity on their premises, hold them accountable. The first case that went before it in August was Franklin Arms. So those of you who work with Lift Jackson and East Jacksonville know Franklin Arms. Franklin Arms is an apartment complex that houses older African-American men and women, families, but it tends to be older on fixed incomes. It is a very violent place. There's a ton of criminal activity there. Franklin Arms is the first place to be brought up in August. Within a 3-hour hearing, the building itself was deemed a public nuisance, and the owner, who lives in Austin, was not just required to come to Jacksonville every month, but was given a list of things that he needs to do to fix the building. After that, and the board has a year jurisdiction, so the board is working with the owner of Franklin Arms to clean it up. And I was told you can't do anything about Franklin Arms. That's not true. The next case that was brought up, the owner walked in, it was a motel, the owner walked in and said, I stipulate to being a public nuisance. How do I fix it? And now there are multiple cases. So when we're looking at crime, what we need to do is not just look at the education system, not just look at making sure that our public safety officials and our first responders have what they need, but we also need to look proactively of what we can do. And that's what hasn't been done, and it's what I've been laser focused on. And when you look at cities, it is statistically true that Republican cities, Republican-led cities, have lower rates of crime. There are 2 cities in the country, you can see the statistics. There are 2 cities in the country that buck that trend, and it's Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Jacksonville, Florida. And we need to reverse that trend and start being a city that is proactive in reducing crime.
Donna Deegan.
Well, the thing I will agree with there is that we definitely have a very reactionary city government. You look under our strategic plan, which is about a half a page, and it basically says, yep, got one. We got to do better. Now, the sheriff is an elected sheriff. He is responsible largely for how he fights crime. The mayor mostly has economic levers to pull, and I believe there are a lot of things that we can do that way. For those of you who have been here for a while, you will remember when our violent crime numbers came down the most in Jacksonville, when Nat Glover was sheriff, and we had a system called the Jacksonville Journey. Does anybody remember the Jacksonville Journey? What made the Jacksonville Journey so effective was that we weren't taking the approach of, I've got a hammer so everything looks like a nail. We were taking the approach that you have to look at all the underlying causes to why criminal activity happens in the first place, and you have to start addressing those things, from literacy to food insecurity, to all the different assets that happen or things that happen in a community that allow people to fall through the cracks. It has a lot to do with things like infrastructure, making sure that you have safe streets, lights, sidewalks. It's the way that you spend your money as a city to create an environment that makes people safer. So, I mean, there's all of that, and all of that was part of the vision of the Jacksonville Journey. It was a very comprehensive look at how we deal with the underlying issues that end up causing crime. So yes, it is absolutely important to fully fund our police and fire departments. Public safety is incredibly important, probably the most important thing that you have on your plate as a mayor. The levers that a mayor has are economic in nature. So what we can do, my 3 pillars of my campaign, I think all together will help to address crime. My 3 pillars are infrastructure, which we have neglected and kicked the can down the road in our underserved communities in the city forever. We've been promising people things since consolidation that would have made their community safer, and we have not delivered. Number two, I have released last March a health care policy plan, a health access plan that would address the fact that we have the best health care in the country in Jacksonville, but some of the worst health care outcomes, from our maternal mortality and infant mortality rates to our measures of primary care. We really, really are in the lower half of our state. Why is that important for crime? People have to be healthy to go to work. That's an important thing. People have to be secure about their health. That's a big deal. And then the third thing is economic. We need to bring more people into this economy. We have an economy that works for a handful of folks. Let's create an economy that works for all of us. Let's create the same sort of opportunities for some of our neighborhoods that are neglected, for things like incubator programs and things like facade grants for businesses.
Would you raise taxes to do that?
Look, I don't think we need to raise taxes. I don't think we suffer so much from a lack of wealth in this city as we suffer from a lack of political will. There is nothing that we are suffering from in this city that political will not fix. And if we would actually stop being allergic to getting our tax dollars back, if we would go and draw down so much of the money that we could be getting in grants that we'd leave on the table in this city because 20 years ago we decided we didn't want that we could solve a myriad of problems in this city. So I just think that you cannot have a single-minded, myopic approach to solving crime. How has that worked for us? I mean, how has it worked, guys? It has not worked. Just the big, tough, I'm going to throw everybody in jail talk from everybody from the mayor on down does not work. You have to address the underlying causes. And that's what I would bring to the table as mayor. There's so much I'd like to say about this, but I'm going to let Audrey talk because she's going to accuse me of talking too long. She's going to say, Donna, you have talked too long. Go ahead.
Senator Gibbs.
Thank you.
Sorry.
We're talking about crime, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. But there's a whole lot of other stuff that got in there, so should I take my time too, or should I start at the end, the beginning? All right, anyway.
From what I can tell, everybody's into what all three of you are saying, so.
Okay, good. That's a good thing. So thank you. So the good news is my degree is in criminology from the Florida State University. Shameless plug.
Go Knowles.
Go ahead. And I'm working on my, I should have my master's in public administration, which was shameless plug too, by the end of May from the University of North Florida. And so I understand the theories of crime, first of all. And so and we have to, crime is a big umbrella. So we have to really focus in on what kind of crime is it that we're talking about, right? Right now, and it's what seems to happen, and some crime is cyclical. And right now, we've had rashes up and down of gun violence. And so why is that happening? And I talked to Melissa Nelson about a year or so ago about why are we cycling so much with the gun issue? Well, she told me, first of all, one gun turns over in this community multiple times. So we have folks leaving guns in their cars. Don't raise your hand if you do that. In unlocked places in their home. And so sometimes they don't report their guns as stolen. And so those guns end up in the street and get passed from one person to the next. Until what? Until that gun can be recovered or until the perps are arrested or young people gone to a juvie. And it's a continuing issue for us until I believe our population starts to get a little bit older. So we have a very young population in Jacksonville. Average age is like around 37-ish, so that means, and there's more young people behind. And people tend to commit less crimes as they get older. So we keep having these rashes as our young people reach a certain age and have access to guns that even they may get from their friends. And so the solution, in my opinion, for the issue that we're having is one within the entire community. How hard is it to make sure your car is locked? Why you got a gun left in your car in the first place, right? Lock it up. It's not difficult to make sure you don't have a weapon in your car and your car is unlocked. It's not difficult to report a gun that's stolen. We need to know that, because in addition to those that are stolen and out in the street, people have the ability to make guns at home. You can order parts and make your own gun. That adds more guns to the mix. Now we got permitless carry. What in the world is going to happen now? And so the way we deal with that situation, I believe, is like back in the day. Number one, and news came on at 11, I think only back then, it says 11 o'clock, do you know where your kids are? So it's 11, well now it's like 9, 10, 11 o'clock news. Do you know if your car is locked? Is your car locked? If you have a gun, is your gun locked up? We can't be afraid to have those conversations with folks. Parents, there are some parents who live in fear in their homes. Did you know that? They don't even get to check under the bed or in the drawer or in the backpack to make sure that there's not a gun in their house. And some know there's a gun in their house and they don't know how to report it. So we have to make it safe for parents and even friends to tell somebody about a gun. We have to. The sheriff needs to help us figure it out. As mayor, I have the background to work with the sheriff to address the issue, also to use more civil citations, more diversion, more prevention. I also believe in community policing, but my idea of community policing, and somebody stole my thunder because they heard me say it before, is that I believe if we add more officers, back in the day, our officers used to patrol the community where they grew up in, right? So you have a different outcome and a different relationship with the community, which is important when you're talking about controlling crime and working with law enforcement, because there's no more fistfights. There's only guns. And we have to have coverage in our neighborhoods. And I also want to make sure that people don't feel threatened when there's a unit sitting on their block. But that officer is there for your safety and not to arrest you. And so our issue in dealing with crime overall is the data and the trends. And that's one of the things I wrote in one of my 50 questionnaires that we all got to fill out for running for mayor. And that is making sure that we are addressing the right crime with the right money, because the budget, the pot where the budget sits is not an endless pot. And so we have to make sure we are following data. I'm very data driven. I want to make sure that the data that comes from JSO is actually usable. It needs some tweaking the last time I checked, and is shared with the public. That's important. You should be able to find it without a lot of trouble. And so the way we fund how we fight crime is based on data trends. Right now we have a gun issue. We have a big gun issue, and it's among our young people. So we need to track that data and make sure we know where it's trending to. It's in certain neighborhoods. What resources do we need to use there to help get rid of that problem?
Thank you.
Oh, hi.
Hi. We are to the question and answer. You've seen some of our students walking around collecting cards. If you have a question, we're only accepting written questions this evening, so if you have one that hasn't been picked up, let us know. I'll start with one that actually has my name on it. It said, I assume all candidates were invited to tonight's forum. I want to clarify that we invited the top candidates from each party so that we could have lengthy conversation rather than tidbits and snippets from just one folk or another. And so thank you to you ladies for responding. I did not hear anything back from Davis, and Ferrara said he could not make it this evening. So I hope that answers that question. I'm going to turn it back over to Melissa. But let us know if you have cards.
Thank you. I've been given a few cards out of the many you've been so kind as to fill out. These are a curated list of questions from the Interfaith Center, so thank you for providing them. And a question from someone in the audience is, how will you support LGBTQ youth as mayor of Jacksonville? Leanna Cumber.
Look, again, I think that local government really needs to focus. We have a lane that we need to focus on, and our lane is very narrow. We have to focus on what the state and federal government can and won't do and what the private sector won't do. And that's what we need to focus on, and it's what we haven't focused on for years. And so what I'm going to be focused on as mayor is making sure that we improve literacy so all of our kids will have opportunity, making sure that we reduce the crime so all of our children have opportunity, and making sure that the infrastructure throughout the city is good so that we bring businesses so all of our kids can have the opportunity to be successful. And if we focus on that, then all of our children will have the opportunity to be successful, and that is government's role.
Donna Deegan.
Yeah, I want to make sure that our LGBTQ young people feel safe. I want to make sure they feel wanted. I want to make sure they feel like they can be in an environment in school to learn like everybody else. I want them to feel like they have resources that they can turn to, just like other children. I just think it's incredibly important that we create an environment for learning, especially in our schools, for everybody. I've been really disheartened to see what's been happening in terms of removing those materials from schools too. I have spoken to teachers who have been scared to death to even have a rainbow flag, or actually have been told to take those down from their classrooms. I think, again, we are in a situation where power wants to divide at the end of the day. These are kids that are vulnerable to suicide. They're kids that are vulnerable to mental health issues because all of the things that they face on a regular basis from people that simply don't understand who they are. And they need the same resources as any child. I don't understand why that's as controversial as it is. I just feel that it is incredibly important in an inclusive community. And again, I'm gonna take it back to, if we're gonna talk about everything from how we get along in this city to bringing businesses to this city. We have to be a welcoming, open-armed city to everybody. And that is what I feel that we are missing in the current iteration of whatever this is that we're in. But those kids are vulnerable, and we need to make sure that we care for them as much as we're caring for every child in our schools.
Audrey Gibson.
Maybe I misunderstood the question. What is going to?
It's a question from the audience given to me by the Interfaith Center. How will you support LGBTQ youth as mayor?
Well, as mayor, I will support every individual in the city. I don't think there's support for categories of people. We're all human beings with needs as human beings, and so certainly if that's a policy question or support a policy question, I'm there. But I don't categorize people based on their sex or their orientation of any of that. That's not what I do as a legislator, and is not what I would do as mayor. I think I've talked about unity and bringing people together and ensuring we're all together this entire evening. I don't set aside any particular group or sections of people into categories. That is not what I do. And so whatever is available to every other individual in this city will be available to every other individual in this city. There's no difference.
Another question from the audience. How can we trust any of the candidates to be positive leaders for the city when all we see are negative ads on TV? Of course, it is campaign season, and we do tend to see a lot of those. So if I could ask all three of you respond to that question, please.
Sure. Well, I hope that that wasn't directed at me because there's some
No,
positive
it
ads.
doesn't mention any names.
Positive ads about how I grew up and what I'm looking forward to in changing this city. And there's a very nice positive ad if you watch Spanish television that my father has done in Spanish. So I think there's a lot of positivity out there.
Donna Deegan.
Well, obviously, I've talked a lot about this. I've talked a lot about it tonight, but I've talked a lot about it for a long time, just in terms of how we conduct ourselves in this city. I think people can trust me on this issue because I have walked that walk. If you have followed me at all in the last 40 years and how I have conducted myself and how I've written 2 books, one of which is completely a book about outlook. And how we treat each other. I think that if you watch the way people behave instead of just listen to what they say, you very often will find that answer. And I would say that what we are desperately lacking in our city and in our world is empathy for each other and compassion. I have said from the get-go that I am going to run a positive, forward-thinking, vision-forward campaign, and that is what I am going to do. And I think that, I hear over and over again this whole idea of, well, politics is a zero-sum game. Maybe it is. At some point, if enough of us want different, if enough of us want civility, if enough of us want to have a community that recognizes each other's humanity and wants to work together and wants to celebrate all of who we are, we will reject zero-sum politics. And we will say to ourselves, no, we're going to be better than that. And so I'm prayerful and hopeful that this is the cycle that we can make that happen. And I think that you can trust me on those issues as a leader because that is how I have led my life.
Audrey Gibson.
Thank you. And being professional has been the mark of my career from starting in the House. I've always been extremely positive, and and on into the Senate. And I've had opponents before, but I don't have time to talk about them. I only have time to talk about me and my things that I'm doing and what I've done in this community. And that's the same way I'm running this campaign. I'm going to use my money to talk about me, right? Me and what I've done and what I'm capable to do and the experience I bring to the mayor's office. That's what I want people to hear. I don't worry about all of the rest of it. It's not important to me. Me is me. I'm good. I am. And I'm a great leader. And I'm going to spend the rest of my campaign money telling you that as much as I possibly can. In case you've missed all the things I've done over the years in Jacksonville, right? And if you've missed it, please call me anytime. Please watch my ads. Please listen to my radio. You will find that Audrey Gibson only talks about Audrey Gibson.
And on that note, let's have a big round of applause for our panel. Thank you all. Now the mail ballots are going out. The election's just around the corner, so vote, everybody. Thank you.
It started already. The election is here. Yes.
Can I just have your attention 1 minute? First of all, I would like to recognize, I think Omega Allen came in. She's running for the mayor, so we want to appreciate her attendance. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it very much. And a couple of things. As a board chair, I always ask for the donations. So please, if you can help and donate, that will be greatly appreciated. It will enable us to go and do these events in the future. And we always, because of my homeland, what happened in Turkey with earthquake, so I will appreciate everybody's prayers. Very valuable to us. Please pray for those people who are impacted in this earthquake. And thanking all the candidates, and Melissa, thank you so much for moderating that. Thank you. Have a good night.